People, we're back in Portsmouth, and this week we've got Vincent Noyce of Portsmouth Distillery.
I got to the bottom of a bottle of rum that I was drinking, one of my favourite ones from Antigua, English Harbour 5-year-old, and I suggested to Giles that we started a rum club, a little bit like the gin clubs. Now, back then, there weren't rum distilleries in the UK, people weren't making rum. So we decided to go for it. We wanted to set up in an historic building. We didn't want to do it in a sterile industrial lockup because you don't have the story and you don't have things like this. We are probably England's oldest rum distillery, having only started in 2018. May 24 we released England's first ever 5-year-old rum, so that's the first rum that's ever been made from scratch and aged in England. I got into rum as a youngster and then sort of been with it all the way through. I just love the culture that rum has out in the Caribbean. I love the way that it serves the community as much as just being a drink. So I wanted to do that in Portsmouth.
Alright, cool. Vincent.
Vince, yeah, Vince is good. Thanks, Alec. Yeah.
Nice. Well, nice to meet you. Welcome to the show. The show where we shine a light on people doing things in communities, and as you said there, it was like the best kept secret of Portsmouth.
Well, worst kept secret.
Secret.
It's what we're trying to make it, obviously, so that we can get people in. But, yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, no, it's a lovely venue. I knew it was here. I came in it like a few times in the past, but I didn't know that this place was here. So this is really cool.
Well, this is all new. Well, obviously the casemate's not new. This used to be our office. What we've done this year is we've moved all the entertainment. If you come before 25, all of our entertainment marquees, etc., are over on the right-hand side as you came onto the distillery site. We've now moved them to the left-hand side. We've extended one of the marquees. We put a floor down. We've got 2 new bars, so there's a lodge bar as well as this one. We've got proper posh toilets, which is a nice thing to have. We've got heaters. So it feels like an inside space now instead of a sort of a windy old tent, which is what it was like before. And this is a sort of the crowning glory, I guess, this particular bar.
It's really
and it's all thanks to RRS, Rapid Response Solutions, who have come on board and yeah.
Interesting. Wow, cool. So, alright, so a little tradition I've got on this show is, instead of me giving you an introduction, I'd like to just give it over to you. So, who in a nutshell is Vince?
Right, well, I suppose let's hinge it all around the company, I guess. I am an ex-Royal Naval officer, joined the Navy back in January 1987, did the best part of 26 years. In 1989, I went to Dartmouth Royal Naval College, which was Britannia Royal Naval College, which is where they do the officer training down in Dartmouth. And I met Giles Colligan, who is the other co-founder of the Portsmouth Distillery. Or actually the Rum Club Limited, because the company is the Rum Club Limited, trading as the Portsmouth Distillery. We started up, we both left the Navy in 2012. He went off and did something really exciting with business management. I went and did something really dull and boring in the Caribbean for 5 years, working on the banana boats out there with Geese Line. And we sort of came together in by accident in terms of business-wise, having known each other for a long time at that time, serving together twice in the Navy. I got to the bottom of a bottle of rum that I was drinking, one of my favourite ones from Antigua, English Harbour 5-year-old, and I suggested to Giles that we started a rum club, a little bit like the gin clubs. He thought that was a good idea, so we did, and it was only really for fun. You know, it was never going to make us lots of money, but it got us into the industry, which was a really good thing to do. That ticked along from 2015 when we started it, and then in 2017 I was made redundant from Geese Line, and we'd been talking about possibly starting a rum distillery. Now, back then there weren't rum distilleries in the UK, people weren't making rum. So we decided to go for it, and we strapped on basically, and we're on for the ride now. We wanted to set up in an historic building because Portsmouth has many of them. As you'll know, it's difficult to turn around in Portsmouth without bumping into one. We didn't want to do it in a sterile industrial lockup because you don't have the story and you don't have things like this. So we asked the council. The council said, we're just going down to Fort Cumberland, to which we said, where? which is pretty much what everyone says when you say Fort Cumberland. It's in Eastney, people, down in the southeastern tip of Portsea Island. Fantastic spot. We came down, had a look around, found these casemates that we're in now. They were perfect for the job, and we pretty much signed the dotted line there and then. So the passion behind the project, I suppose, the passion for rum comes from me, and I've been into rum for most of my life. My father was in the Navy. The naval connection, not necessarily the rum side, I suppose, other than he was in the Navy with the Tot. I got into rum as a youngster, and then sort of been with it all the way through. I just love the culture that rum has out in the Caribbean, predominantly, which is where I know it from. I love the way that it serves the community as much as just being a drink. So I wanted to do that in Portsmouth. Portsmouth being the home of the Royal Navy, and myself and Giles being ex-naval officers, all sort of came together. It was very serendipitous, the whole growth of the industry. And we decided that this would be the right thing to do. And as I said, at the time, nobody was making rum. We just ordered the kit, did it all organically, and we've grown and grown and grown, which is why, weirdly, and I say weirdly because it always makes me giggle a little bit, we are probably England's oldest rum distillery, having only started in 2018. Because last May 24, we released England's first ever 5-year-old rum, so that's the first rum that's ever been made from scratch and aged in England completely. So obviously we're into more than 5-year-old now, and I think our next expression will be 7 or 8, we haven't yet decided. Wow. So it's all exciting stuff.
Okay, interesting. A lot to unpick there. So, said you was a Royal Naval officer. What drew you to that? I mean, you said your dad was in there, but was that always your career path?
Yeah, to be honest, I can't really remember wanting to be anything else. I think I was about 9 when I first decided I wanted to join the Navy properly, and decided that that's what I was going to do. I didn't go straight in as an officer. I didn't pass the exam to begin with, so I joined as a rating. I did just under 3 years and then got promoted and went through the officer program that way. So I really loved it. I was a warfare officer, so driving ships, fighting ships, all the sort of the plethora of stuff that goes with that, and it's a really good rounded thing to do. I really enjoyed it. Really?
Did you ever go into or experience combat?
Not in a ship per se. Well, I don't know. We stood off. I was in HMS Avenger in the early 90s, when we stood off Sarajevo when it was being bombed in the Kosovo thing. So that was reasonably close. And I did a tour in Iraq when we were still on the fringes of fighting. So yeah, I suppose, but nothing. I wouldn't say I was a war hero of any description.
No, fair enough. I mean, I'm interested in that because obviously it's a rum and gin distillery, I'm guessing. I know. And so do you think your previous life in the military has bleeded into how you operate now?
I think most definitely. I think certainly what you get as because both Giles and I, we were both warfare officers, and we had a very similar career path. And what that gives you, what it gave us, is the ability to organise, to galvanise, to make teams, to prioritise, to go through all. There's a lot of legislation and lots of admin that goes into setting up a distillery, as you might imagine. Mainly hinging around excise protection with HMRC, i.e. protecting the fact that you do it correctly so no one can come and steal it, and then they won't get their tax on the alcohol we sell. So for us, filling in those forms, doing that regulation stuff was second nature, because we were both used to it. We'd been dealing with munitions and explosives and that sort of stuff. So actually that side of it, and I say we, Giles is the brains behind the outfit. I'm the gobby creative one. But so doing all of that succinctly definitely gave us an advantage, and we turned around the whole process of getting our licenses very quickly compared to a lot of people, because we kind of used to that kind of bureaucracy, I guess.
Interesting.
And in terms of the other side of the business, and the business we're trying to grow now, which is the entertainment, the party side, absolutely. You know, I mean, because we've served in many ships between the two of us around the world, and you know, generally speaking, when a ship's in for a goodwill visit, there's a cocktail party on the first night. That isn't just, you know, that doesn't just happen by accident. That has to happen, and of course you have to host it as well. So we're pretty adept at that sort of thing, which is why this place is such a cool place to come when we have an event or whatever. People always remark on how much fun they have when they get here.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. So, did you grow up in Portsmouth?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I was born in Portsmouth, St Mary's, in 1968. As I said, my father was in the Navy at the time, but I've lived all over the place because Mum went with Dad wherever he went. I went to boarding school, so I was up in Norfolk first and then Suffolk, and I've been in and out of Portsmouth throughout my childhood, but didn't grow up here, didn't go to school here. I came back here in 1993 when I got married, and I've lived in Portsmouth ever since.
Okay. Just on that, I live with someone who went to boarding school, and he had an experience. But what was your experience at boarding school like?
Great.
Yeah.
Odd. That question is often asked, and I always answer it the same way. My experience of boarding school was an experience at the time. I was 10 when I went. I was 14 and a half when I left. To me, what happened, and there was some weird stuff that happened. I mean, you know, my headmaster ended up in jail. We don't necessarily need to go down the ins and outs of all of that. When you're 10, 11, 12 years old, what happens at school is what happens at school. And unless there's someone telling you that something shouldn't be happening or it's out of the ordinary, then you accept it as the ordinary. So it was an experience, and I very much enjoyed being away from home. I very much enjoyed the camaraderie of my schoolmates and the stuff we used to get up to. It gave me some security because I was moving school often, and actually that's what I needed. I asked to go to boarding school. So.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Okay, so you're in the Navy. You do, I can't even count. It was 20 odd, nearly 30 years?
25 and a half years by the time I left, yeah.
So throughout that time, you said you liked rum, but what was drink culture like for you and your surroundings when you was in the Navy?
Well, back then, there was quite a drinking culture. I think that's eased off quite a lot now, and probably quite rightly so. We used to work hard and play hard. That was the philosophy, and we did. We worked very hard. We were at sea for long periods of time, and then when we got alongside, we let our hair down and enjoyed it. That's what it was like. And as you go up progress through the ranks and the positions in the ships, you go from sort of the youngster being led to the leader in terms of that, if that's the sort of person you are. And I always was. I always did enjoy a good run ashore somewhere and seeing somewhere new, experiencing the sights. Yeah, and generally speaking, there'd be a bit of alcohol involved in that. Yeah.
Oh no, fair enough. No, the reason I picked up on there that you said it's decreased slightly now in the Navy or in the armed forces. Don't want to put an umbrella on it, but as such. But on that, why do you think that is?
Well, I think society's changed. The forces do generally reflect society, and I think I get confused about the Gen Z, millennials, blah. I don't even know who's who, but the younger generation, they don't drink as much as we did. I guess that's a function of cost. It's a function of people. The social scene is less, in so much that when I first joined the Navy, there were no mobile phones, there were no computers. We all sat in the mess. We played cards. We played board games. So we mixed together, and when mixing together, there would be some drinking. Now, I think in the same way society, people stay at home a bit more, don't they? There's a lot of screen time, there's lots of computer games, etc., etc. So I think entertainment is much more of an individual thing than it used to be a group thing. I'm not sure I like that, if I'm honest. I think the group dynamic is a great thing. So I think society, as I say, the forces reflect society, and so fewer people are going out and drinking, therefore fewer people do it in the services. And I think from a professional point of view, things are much more technical these days, and I suppose one could argue slightly more dangerous. So it's probably best that the alcohol consumption is eased off a bit.
Fair enough. So, okay, you go throughout the whole of the Navy, you come out, sorry, I forgot your business partner's name.
Giles.
So you come out with Giles and decide to go down to rum. So, but I'm not going to... Do I see rum here? Is rum on the shelves here, or is it just gin now?
No, we've got 3 gins.
Okay.
Fort Gin, which is known as Portsmouth Gin. It's a very nice, delicate, more of a Geneva style than a London Dry. We've got Tudor Gin, which is a London Dry, and we've got Cherry Tudor, because Tudor has cherry in it. There are 3 gins. We have 6 rums, soon to be 7 rums. So we have anything from our unaged rum, which is called 1968. We decided to call it 1968 because that's the beginning of everything. That's the start of the rum distillery. So we went back to the start of the 2 co-founders, and we were both born in 1968. So our single rums, i.e. ones which have not been flavoured or adulterated in any way, are all named after a year. So 1968 is the unaged. And our 2 aged rums that we have at the moment, our 3-year-old is 1812. That's when Fort Cumberland was finished being built, so it ties us back to our heritage. And 1747, which is our 5-year-old rum, which is when they started building Fort Cumberland. And the other rums in between, the other unaged rums, we have Forum, which is a very interesting rum, leaves a lot of education. It's a rum that I invented for the gin drinker, to take them from gin to rum, because it's a botanical rum. So we distill 5 botanicals into our unaged rum. That makes it eminently drinkable with tonic and a slice of orange. It's a lovely drink in the summer. And it does work. We do get gin drinkers that say they don't like rum, they try it with tonic, and then all of a sudden the light bulb goes on and we've got them into rum. Okay. We do Mutiny, which is our coconut rum, which is just 1968 with lightly toasted coconut shavings, infused for 7 weeks, little bit of sugarcane syrup in there to sweeten it a little bit, but it's not a Malibu, it's a very subtle, nice coconut rum. And our Cinnabar spice rum, which is a distilled spice rum, so we distill the spices into it, we sweeten it very slightly using the same syrup we used to make the rum in the first place, because our rum is created very uniquely. We don't use molasses to make our rum. So it is all about the rum. The 7th one, which is literally in the making at the moment, the labels just arrived the other day, I've finally caved, because I keep on being asked for dark navy rum. Dark navy rum is a little bit of a contrived spirit in many ways for other people that make it. So we've gone down that line as well. Why not, to see if it works? And we're Navy anyway, we're in a Navy city, let's see if it runs. But what we've done is we've blended our 5-year-old, our 3-year-old and our unaged, so they're all our rums. There's no import or anything like that. A little bit of the syrup, a little bit of other bits and bobs to produce a very nice dark navy rum. That should be hitting the streets in time to celebrate the anniversary of the VE Day on the 8th of May, I think it is. So.
Nice. So I've got some questions there. So I get what aging does to alcohol, I get it, but for people who don't know, what does it do? How does it change the taste?
Right, well, aging is traditionally done in oak casks. The reason for that is because it allows the spirit within, whatever the spirit is, within the cask to breathe. Obviously, wood is not completely, it's waterproof, but it allows air to transfer in and out, only very, very minor, but that's what it does. I equate aging spirits to making sauce. So what I mean by that is, you think about when you make a gravy, a sauce or something like that, what you do is you get all the ingredients you know will taste nice, you put it into a saucepan, you boil it, and then you simmer it slowly, don't you, over time, and it reduces in quantity but increases in flavour. And that's exactly what we're doing with the spirit, the rum. in our ex-bourbon casks. But it's a lot slower. It's a lot, much more protracted evolution. So we put our 1968, our unaged rum, into an ex-bourbon cask, and we stick it in one of these casemates. We've got 3 over in the far side of the fort, which is where we age our casks. We've got over 100 casks over there aging. 200 litres. It sits there in an ambient temperature between 8 and 12 degrees all year round. And it breathes. So when it gets slightly warmer, it expands and goes into the wood. That pulls in some colour from the char from the inside, but it also brings in some lignin, vanillins from the wood. And it reduces, i.e. it evaporates. So again, the flavours concentrate. So we go from 1968, which is a very, very nice rum and can be sipped on its own. It's sweet, it's soft, it's got a big underbelly of tropical fruit, to a now much more characterful. It's got a little bit of colour. The sweetness is intensified. 1812, our 3-year-old, has a lot going on the palate. You still get a little hint of the bourbon, which was previously in the cask, and it's a lovely, lovely rum. And then the 5-year expression, another 2 years on, reduced very slightly again, a little bit more colour, bit more sweetness, but this is now a rum. The influence of the bourbon is completely gone. There is none. Excuse me. It's just rum, and it's lovely. And that will just keep going on and on. So as it reduces, as the flavours become more intense and the rumness comes, it will, really, really bring out the flavours. More treacle, more burnt tropical fruits, that sort of flavour. Lovely, lovely round flavours. And then as it goes further and further, the wood will start to bring into it, and you'll be able to taste the oak into it. That's from sort of 10, 12 years onwards. And hopefully we'll get to that. I mean, time flies so quickly. So that's how the now, if just a very quick adjunct to that, if you age in a tropical climate, then you get a lot more colour into your rum. Because the cask is charred on the inside, they burn it. So what happens in a tropical climate, the temperature range is much greater. So you go from, I say much greater, it's weird because it's higher. So you go from, say, 22 degrees at the coldest, 25 degrees at night, up to 40 plus degrees during the day. So that makes the liquid inside the cask expand that much more and push into the wood that much more, which draws out the colours and the flavours that much more. And that does it much quicker. It also increases what we call the angel share, i.e. the evaporation that disappears into the atmosphere. We have that here, of course, but it's on a much lower scale because our temperature range is not so big. It's a bit like a single malt up in Scotland. A 3-year-old, a 5-year-old single malt in Scotland doesn't have a huge amount of colour because it's being aged in the same temperate climate as we have here.
I see. Do you ever manipulate the surroundings it's actually aging in? So, do you change the temperature of the room? Or
No. Our casemates, and as I said before, this is a casemate, and this is just a clean, nice bar version of where we're aging our spirits. The roof is about 8 to 12 feet deep in soil, so it's very, very well insulated, and it keeps the same temperature year round. So it's roughly between 8 and 12 degrees all year round, and we don't change that. We just let nature do its thing, and we try and do everything as traditional as we can here, in so much that we don't grow sugarcane in this country, but that's, we do what we do as traditionally as we can. So the liquid gets put in the cask gets put in the aging room, it just sits there and we leave it and it does what it has to do, and then we pop it, disgorge it, we filter it, and we add a little bit of water to dilute the alcohol, put it in a bottle, and that's it.
Okay, I see. Okay, so moving on then, ever so slightly. So you touched on a while ago that you don't use molasses. So first of all, what is molasses and why don't you use it?
Right, well, molasses is the waste product of sugar production. Without getting hugely technical and therefore put me in a spotlight to be shot down by experts, basically molasses drops out during the centrifuge process of making granulated sugar. So you take the sugarcane juice, it's boiled, it's then put into a centrifuge which crystallizes it as it dries out, and from that process, it's warmed and done that at the same time, from that process molasses, which is a sort of a black treacly stuff, drops out of the centrifuge. Generally speaking, to get a white granulated sugar that we all put in our tea and coffee is 3 stages of that. So you have 3 stages of molasses. Molasses still has a lot of sugar in it, and it's very highly intense in flavour. It's treacle effectively. So if you've ever made a treacle tart and you bought that Tate and Lyle treacle in a little tin, that's as close as you can get. You know, that's a sort of a sweety version of molasses, if you like. Excuse me. And that's traditionally what rum was made from. People who make rum in the UK, generally speaking, most people use molasses. And the reason for that is we don't grow cane in the UK. There are 3 ways of making rum. You use the sugarcane juice, you ferment it, you make rum from it. This is called rum agricole, French West Indian style rum. This is very grassy, herbal, floral, but sweet. It's lovely. Doesn't tend to work with the UK palate because it's not the sort of rum we're used to. Other areas of the world, a lot in Central America, North and South America, take the juice, boil it, make a syrup, and then ferment that and make rum. And then the rest of them make it from the molasses, the waste product. So if you're a UK producer, the easiest form of raw material to make rum is to buy in molasses. There's a couple of companies in the country that have been importing it for years from all over the world, and they homogenize it into a product. Quite a good sugar content, therefore you can use it to ferment. That was traditionally bought in for the confectionery trade. So that's what most people use. I didn't want to make a rum from molasses because I wanted to do something slightly different, and I wanted to make a rum that you could drink straight off the still. So we make ours from syrup. Now you can buy syrup and bring it into the country, but it's way too expensive and you're never going to use it quickly enough, to be honest. So what we do is we import dehydrated, not evaporated, dehydrated sugarcane juice from Costa Rica. Comes from the same area, from the same producers, 40-mile radius, from a company that's been making this product for 60 years. We import that, we rehydrate it, we boil it, we make a syrup, and then we ferment the syrup and distill that, and that's where we make our rum. So that's very, very distinct. So the distinctness is the 3 key ones: dehydrated sugarcane juice, we make our own syrup, so we're in charge of the profile, and we ferment for 2 weeks. Long fermentation, and that all deliberately done to produce our fabulous 1968 rum. That's our DNA, that's our base rum. All the other rums come from 1968.
See, fair enough. Okay, so I don't know if I'm having like what they call a blonde moment, but what are botanicals? Because you touched on earlier that you said you use all different botanicals to put in, but what are they?
Well, botanicals, we only use those in the gin and our forum, but the botanicals botanicals is a word used for herbal sort of vegetative flavourings, I guess, is how you would wrap it up. So it's all the stuff that we use to flavour the gin. So it's anything from juniper berries to ground almond that we use in Fort Gin. There's freeze-dried cherries we use in Tudor. You know, there's all sorts of other stuff that we use in, Szechuan pepper, pink pepper. They're the botanicals. So you know, whereas you probably wouldn't necessarily describe pepper as a botanical on its own, when you use it in the form to flavour something in a drink, that's where the term botanical comes from.
I see. Fair enough. No. glad I got one. Okay, so that's rum.
Yeah.
So gin.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can speak for anyone else, but me myself, I've actually looked at making gin in the past.
Yeah.
And I just thought, the process of doing that is just way too long. But what is the process of making gin?
Well, gin's very, very simple compared to rum because there's no fermentation involved. The rum, obviously, as I've described, is made from scratch. So we start with no alcohol, we produce our own alcohol through fermentation, and then we ramp that up through 2 distillations to get to the end product, 77% or so rum. Gin, we make our gin, we don't make it from scratch. So what we do is we make our gin via a process known as rectification, which is pretty much how most people in the UK make gin. So we buy in grain neutral spirit, 96% ethanol, very strong alcohol. We put that into our still. We dilute it slightly with water. We then add our botanicals to that, and we run the still. So we distill that. What that then does is takes the base, which is roughly between 50 and 60%. We then distill it, and that produces a spirit which is up nearer 81, 82%, but obviously much less volume. And it's drawn the flavours, the oils, and everything from the botanicals that are in it during that process. So that's how gin is made. So flash to bang, you can make gin in 8 hours. Well, depending on how long your still takes. Ours takes about 8 hours to do a full run. Well, no, more like about 10 hours to do a full run. We introduced 24 hours into that process because we like to steep our botanicals for 24 hours before we put it through the still. It's just something that we do. We find it gives a much greater depth of flavour. So it's much quicker. So I can give you liquor for approximately 700 bottles of gin within 36 hours. You've got to wait the best part of 4 weeks to get that from rum for us. Yeah.
Okay. No, good to know. So, for those who don't know as well, what is distilling? What does that actually mean?
Good question. Distilling is a term. Well, it's a scientific term, but it's a reduction, really, I suppose, is the best way, and a concentration. So, as I described with the gin, we take a lower alcohol level. I mean, you can do it. It doesn't have to be alcoholic. You can do it with water. You can distill water. You've heard the term distilled water, and all it is basically what you do is you heat the liquid to a point where it evaporates. Sometimes you can see it, but generally you can't. So the air is now thick with moisture that goes through the system and then hits what's called a condenser. Now a condenser has cold water running through it. It's a jacket, and there's a pipe that runs through the condenser. The steam, if you like, the hot moisture thick air goes into the tube, is cooled from the outside by the water, and then it condenses again. It reaches its condensation point, its dew point, becoming liquid again, and then it flows out. That's all we're doing. So it doesn't have to be alcohol. It can be anything. That's the process. So you take a liquid, you heat it until it becomes a gas. You then cool the gas when it becomes a liquid again.
I see. Fair enough. Okay, so back to Portsmouth Distillery then. So that was your process of making all the rums, the gins, the space. What do you envision for this place then?
Well, right here, right now, we've turned a corner. As I mentioned earlier, we've got Rapid Response Solution on board. They're great. 2 guys, Paul and Joe. They're very enthusiastic about the Portsmouth Distillery. They've helped us financially to build this space, and they now own a lion's share of the company, which is great. They're really behind the whole brand and Portsmouth Distillery. The future sees the events growing. That's what we want to do. We want this place, Fort Cumberland, and in particular the distillery, to become Portsmouth's worst kept secret, i.e. you want to come here. So this bar you see us sitting in now, this is the Portsmouth Distillery 2.0. You can come down here, you can have a drink, you can come to our events. We've got many events throughout the year planned. We hope then to generate enough interest for this to become a bar, as in people want to come on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, and it be a venue in its own right. We're in the process of developing a school, so we're going to have a gin school and a rum school, spice rum school. Again, in a casemate like this, where you come and make your own gin and rum. We've got a wonderful space above the distillery outside, which overlooks the sea, which we're in the process of getting permissions to put a rooftop bar in, so that you can come down and have a sunset cocktail whilst watching the sun go down over the sea. Lots and lots. In terms of the products, well, rum only gets better with age, and we, as I said, last year we produced our 5-year-old. We're probably going to be looking at a 7 or an 8-year-old expression next. We haven't yet decided. That will be decided on both commercial and taste imperatives. but definitely a 10 and beyond. We want to be, as we are establishing ourselves as one of the premier rum distilleries in the UK. That's where we want to be. We want to be, and we know we'd like to be international, but let's not be too over ambitious. National would be the first crown, and then international thereafter. We do export a little bit anyway through our friends at the NAFI. They've taken our 3-year-old rum and white labelled it, and they've put it around 8 different countries in the world. So we're already around and about, which is great. But we'd like to do that off our own bat and off our own right as well. So that's the future, and provided economically that the world will support that. That's where we'd like to see it go.
Amazing. Well, cool. I mean, that brings us to a lovely close on this part. And I've really enjoyed literally learning about stuff I've never actually put thought to. I mean, I have, but I've literally learned about it today, so I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Pleasure.
And I hope you enjoyed this part. And I look forward to seeing what happens next with the distillery.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Oh, it does. Cool. Alright, so welcome to part 2. So this way we go out into the street, we ask a question, and then we're going to get your feedback on what they have to say. So feel free to stop at any time. Feel free to watch it to the end.
Yeah.
Whatever tickles your fancy, as they say. So we'll just crack straight on and see what's going on. Do you drink alcohol?
Yeah, of course.
Do you care about where it's sourced from?
Yeah, because good alcohol, like particularly beer. So I used to brew my own beer. I nearly started a brewery probably about 10 years ago in Brighton. And when you understand just how easy it is for alcohol to get contaminated, get really gross, like get sick, make you sick, how easy it is when things are being distilled for it to be done wrong, and then for you to get things in there, like I think there's a type of methyl, I think it's methylacetylene, but I don't know if that's the exact wording, but like makes you go blind. I care, I definitely care where it's coming from.
Interesting. Do you drink spirits?
No. I don't drink at all.
No? Are you old enough, or is it just you don't drink?
No, I just don't like the taste. I don't see how people can enjoy that, so yeah.
First of all, do you drink spirits?
Yes.
So do you care where your spirits come from?
Not really.
Why?
It's as long as it gets you the same place, Finest Hennessy, rocket fuel, it's all the same.
Do you drink spirits?
Yeah.
Do you care about where they come from?
Unless it's a good liquor, I'm good with it.
No, that's fair enough.
Unless it's a Scotch whiskey, I'm good with it.
Do you drink spirits?
No.
Why?
Well, I think it's my religion, and then part of it is my culture. We believe that if you drink in my culture, you don't have brain.
So do you drink spirits?
I used to. I believe in Islam, and I believe in Allah, obviously. Spirit makes me, it gives you extra buzz. It makes me feel like you're strong, whatever. It takes you to another level. You feel good. You forget your stress. You forget your everyday life. So for the moment, you think something. It sort of gives you energy. So I don't drink, and that's it. Okay. I used to drink.
Do you drink spirits?
Yes.
Do you care where they come from?
No, I do not. I drink gin.
Yeah.
And whiskey, and then some more gin, and then I'll go, I'll have another whiskey. But mainly gin and whiskey, I don't care where they're from.
No. Alright, so that was the question. Now, any thoughts?
Interestingly, the first guy, he was quite knowledgeable, and it is important because, he mentioned beer first, didn't he, when he talked about how it can make you sick. It can, because the interesting difference between creating spirits from scratch, like we do with the rum, over making beer, is the production of beer, as in wine. The microbiological contamination is easy, i.e., you have to be hyper sterile everything has to be closed down. There has to be airlocks. There's no way that anything can get into to start the process of bacterial and microbiological infection of the stuff, the beer or the wine. Making rum, however, is so much easier, because if you think about it, we've been preserving things with sugar since the year dot, haven't we? Sugar is very, very robust and not entirely impenetrable to bacterial or microbiological infestation, but much, much harder. The sort of the molecular structure, what am I trying to say? Not the boundaries, the skin, if you like, for one of another thing, is much more difficult to penetrate for the bacteria. So it doesn't get infected that quickly or that easily. So that part of the process of making rum is easier. So we do our fermentation. The vats are not locked down. The only reason we have lids on is because we've got a bit of a flaky roof and we don't want that going into it. And that fermentation works, and we can then do the distillation. The other point he made about badly distilled spirits is absolutely correct. Methanol will make you blind. It's where the expression blind drunk comes from. Not that you've had too much to drink on a Thursday night. It literally, if you don't cut it properly, as we call it. So there's a couple of cuts in the process of distillation. The first cut, when you're doing the spirit run, the first cut takes the heads out, or the foreshots, as they're known. These are the ones that have got all the high ether bits in, like your methanol, the stuff that's not good for you. The process of cutting that is done both scientifically and just through practice. You know where it is, and taste, etc. So what we do here at the distillery is we do the old traditional way of, we know pretty much, if we're making gin, for example, and we're doing a full 500 litre run of gin, we know that we're going to finish the heads somewhere in the region of 18 to 21 litres of alcohol come off. That will be the heads run through, so that none of the nasties will be left, that will all have come off. So we're looking for that at that sort of time when we've got that amount of liquor. We check the temperature of the still, we taste it, so we put our finger in the stream, put it on our tongue. If it still has a sort of a soapy feel on the tongue, then we're still in heads, and that's very, very obvious. When you then taste it and you're out of heads, it's a sharp sting of alcohol at sort of 85%, and it's a very distinct difference on the palate. We then verify that by, we draw some off in a glass, we add some water to it. If it goes cloudy, milky, then we're still in heads. If it runs clear with the addition of water, then we're into hearts, and we know that we're through. And we do that with everything. Every time we do a spirit run, we do that with whether it's rum or gin or whatever. So we know we've got rid of any of the nasties. So that's how so that's good that he picked up on that. The other guys, whether they did or didn't drink spirits is, it's a personal thing, isn't it? And good for us that people do, I guess, is all I can say. The sourcing question, I'm not surprised. And I think that's probably what we are seeing at the moment in the spirit world is we saw a massive rise in people liking the artisan spirits, with gin. That's happened. That's that bubble. I wouldn't say it's burst completely, but it's got a lot smaller. It's economics that's driving that. Absolutely, it's economics that's driving that. Because 10 years ago, well, not 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there was a bit more money around. People were much more into the artisan spirit sort of movement, the gin, and gin has definitely opened the door for us to make rum, because, way back 15 years ago, nobody would have spent, or 10 years ago, nobody would have spent £30 on a bottle of gin. Now it's de rigueur to spend 40 plus on a bottle of artisan gin. They opened the door to people spending more on a bottle of spirit to allow us to make rum, because rum does cost more, because there's more in the process, more energy expenditure, more import costs, etc. So it costs more to make a bottle of rum than it does a bottle of gin. So us to be able to sell a bottle of 1968 at 35 is down purely to the fact that people were spending that on gin and a bit more. So that's good. But what we're seeing now is, with the cost of living crisis and things being expensive all the time and things going up and people feeling the pinch, it's a discernible purchase. So if you can buy a bottle of Gordon's for £16 for a litre in Tesco, other supermarkets are available, are you going to spend 35 on a bottle of Fort Gin? It then comes down to personal circumstance, personal taste. Obviously, we would like to think that our gin tastes nicer and is a much nicer experience. But of course, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough. Well, that brings us to a lovely close on that part. Yeah, no, I was going to ask the age-old question, beer or spirits, but you answered that. So,
well, for me personally, beer or spirits?
Beer or spirits,
a beer is always going to be the first, isn't it? Because that's the thirst quencher, if you like, I suppose, and then spirits for the chill out.
Just on that then, so what type of demographic do you find buy your gin and rum?
When we sort of set out, we were trying to hit the 25 to 45-year-olds, I suppose, and I suppose that would be pretty much, I guess 35 to 50 is where our mainstay is of the people that we see come here and buying or whatever. But we also have quite a lot of older clients, especially for the rum and the aged rum, and I think that will get more so, which is partly why I've brought out, or we're about to bring out, the dark navy rum. I say me, I didn't put that together. The blend is done by Joshua, who does a lot of the distilling and the bottling for us now. I need a shout out for him because he's made a really good product there. And so that is for the, shall we say, the older Matlow, the older sailors, because they're the ones who are really pushing for it and wanting it. So across the board. But I think our core would be, it's got to be sort of 30 to 50, because that's where we go back to the discernible purchase piece. That's where hopefully that demographic's got the money to be able to spend on a bottle of booze.
Oh, nice. Well, Vince, that brings us to a lovely close, and it's been a pleasure today. I've learned a lot.
Thank you.
And I hope it's been enjoyable for you. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming, and thank you for drawing a spotlight on us, because we are trying to do some good things for Portsmouth and for the people of Portsmouth, and we'd like to see as many people down here as possible.
Amazing. Well, looking forward to it.
Thank you.